Hey, it feels different, right?
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Fantasy Sports. Today I'm going to be getting into the NBA. I have not covered the NBA in what feels like a long time. Last night I was able to talk with my good friend Patrick, and he realized, or made me realize, that the NBA is very active and I should be covering it more or less than the NFL. I will probably go back to the NFL next week just because we are probably going to, I think it's almost the last week or last 2 weeks before the playoffs wind up starting. There's a lot of seeding change, but I do want to focus on the NBA, and I think what I'm going to do is the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that's a good way to put it with what I want to cover. Just what's going good for the NBA, what players are playing good, what's going on with the bad, whether that be officiating. I have the officiating, the jerseys, and the Pistons as of right now. And then for the ugly, I think Draymond Green and Josh Giddey would be a good topic to cover, just with what's been going on with them outside of basketball. Even though it is, basketball related, it is just, kind of stuff that's not occurring necessarily on the court other than Draymond's, antics. But with that being said, I want to focus on the good first. And the first thing I have to say about the good is the in-season tournament. Obviously, the Lakers came out and won against the Pacers, but the Pacers had a couple upsets. They wound up beating the Celtics. They wound up beating the Bucks. They had a good run. And the Lakers, with classic LeBron fashion, came out, dominated, looked good through the entire tournament, looked good through the entirety of when it started, when the games were, starting, when it mattered to get into the in-season tournament. You just saw LeBron playing his best basketball in every single game. But I think the biggest thing I want to talk about in terms of in-season tournament is after the fact that the Pacers and the Lakers are 1-3, I think both after, the in-season tournament, a little slump. The in-season tournament was a really big success. There was a lot of social media around it. There was a lot of coverage. It seemed as though everyone was really tuned into it, especially with the matchup that there was. With the way Halliburton has been playing, that's something I've been good. I'm pretty sure he set a couple records now with turnovers and assists to turnovers. He's had plenty of games with 16 plus assists. Plenty of games where he just looks like dominant out on the court when he comes to dishing the ball. And I think this is the biggest thing for the Pacers this year. They've been way better than they have in the past, and Halliburton looked to that part last season, but they've come together as a team this year, way more than they did last year in terms of what they're doing as a team on the floor rather than individually. Obviously, the rookie played very well on that team. And now you see Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, and Tyrese Halliburton all stepping up, but more or less Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner as part stepping up. Obi Toppin has his games here and there. But the in-season tournament, back to that, was a big success just because I feel what they made it. There was a lot of teams, obviously some of the best teams were in it. Whether they lost or won, it was still really entertaining to see who was going to be. It was almost like a mini glimpse into the playoffs, which I think was the biggest part about it, because playoff basketball is pretty much the highlight of the season when it comes down to it. Everyone tunes into that. Everyone's excited for the series, and I feel like that's why the in-season tournament did well. I think the only negative towards it is the what do they call it? Courts. The courts are they're just really brutal. I forget having this talk, but just looking at what they're doing in terms of coloring, not for the older viewers, and I hate to say it, but just the way, even for me, just having all blue courts, all red courts, all black courts, all colored courts, other than an official NBA court, wooden floor. It's a lot for the eye, and I think that's probably the biggest negative takeaway I would have for it. I think the in-season tournament courts could be worked on. I think it's an interesting idea. I think what they're doing is interesting. I think the in-season tournament, like I said, was a big success, but I think if there was anything negative to take away from it, I think they could do without the courts. I think people understand the separation between a game and an in-season tournament game. I get that when they're streaming a bunch of games at once, they want the separation when you go on live TV and you can see, oh wow, this court is clearly for the in-season tournament. But I think if you just put a little logo, maybe like when the finals have their little logos on the court, or maybe in the bottom right of the game on the broadcast, I think that would do way better than making an entire court blue. It's just a little rough, but with that being said, the in-season tournament was a big success. And then my last thing for the good has been the Rockets. They're 13-11. The only thing that's probably the worst for them right now is Jalen Green. He's not been playing well, but Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun, they've looked very, very good. The rookie Cam Whitmore's looked very good. It's been very solid on offense for them, and it's one of the biggest things for me because As much as I'm a Raptors fan, I love the Rockets because of James Harden. I've always loved the Rockets. I loved Kevin Porter Jr. last year. I'm a big player. I'm a big sucker for lefty players on the Rockets. And seeing them do good is really exciting just because I know they have that talent. They have Ime Udoka as their coach. And watching them just be able to be successful is one of the biggest things for me, just knowing how much talent they have, like I said. Sengun is probably playing at all NBA, like third team level right now. He's one of the very few players that is like a baby Jokic almost. He's obviously not putting up the numbers of Jokic, but with that being said, he's putting up numbers like Jokic in the same position, which is really impressive just for what that team was, 2-3 years ago to what it is now, even last year. Being a plus, over 500 team, especially with the way they played last year, pretty much getting what? I think they had the fifth pick. They had a fifth pick, but they had the second worst record in the league compared to the Pistons. It's really impressive to see. They made some good things happen in the offseason. Dillon Brooks kind of found his flow recently. It was a rough start, but he wound up getting it going. And I think that's a big thing for the Rockets, just getting it going. I think too many times you've seen a team like the Pistons, which I'll get into next, just kind of fall into the trap of continual bad play, continual bad losses. And the Rockets haven't had many of those that make them seem like they're going to not be a successful team this season. Maybe not a playoff team, but they're definitely going to be a better team than they were last year, which is a big upgrade from being the second worst team in the entire league. And then focusing on the bad, I want to focus on the Pistons. I'm pretty sure at this point they've lost 26 straight. They went 2-1 in their first three, and they've lost every single game since that. The other night, Cade Cunningham had 43 points, 7 assists, and 8 rebounds, or 8 3-pointers made. And they still lost by like 6. I'm a big Cade Cunningham fan. I'm saying, I've said this for years now, that he's going to be one of the prominent players in the NBA. And I think one of the biggest frustrations is wasted talent, especially for me. I just love Cade Cunningham so much. So to watch him continually lose, especially when putting up like all-star numbers this year, you see Jaden Ivey taking a back seat when it comes down to playing time. And you see these players like Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman getting rotated in and out, and Jalen Duran has his injury. It's rough. It's rough for the Pistons just because like they have talent on their team like the Rockets, but it seems like they can't put it together. I mean, when you have players like this, you would expect a winning record. They have a really actually solid team, in my opinion. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duran, Bagley, James Wiseman. Although they're all young and they're all like quote unquote, maybe not the best players or busts like Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. They've showed like their talent in the back half of last season, regardless of the garbage stats or not. They've shown that they can perform. So it's just kind of confusing to me to win 2-1, and they looked really strong in those first 3 games. They look like way more of a complete team. They have Asar Thompson or Amen Thompson at small forward as well. You have this young, like energetic, very talented team, and to lose over 20 games straight obviously is deflating as a team, but it's just confusing to see where the coach is taking them in terms of what they're trying to do. Doesn't seem like there's been many changes made, regardless of the record. And then my next 2 things are the jerseys and officiating. The Nike deal ends very soon. It's been a big thing that the jerseys continue to get worse as each season goes on. And when you compare it to the league like the NFL, the MLB, where it seems as though jerseys continue to get better, and helmets get better and all that, you question whether or not the deal should be renewed, whether or not they're going to move on, why they still have the deal, why they haven't disbarred the deal and just continued with old jerseys. We see more and more teams going to throwbacks, more and more teams trying to stray away from these jerseys, but they can't because obviously they're in the Nike deal. But it's just confusing because the jerseys continue to get worse, continue to get more plain, continue to get uglier. And that's been a big negative in terms of visualization for the court and, for watching basketball, the jerseys in the court. So that's bad. But the last thing I want to get into when it comes down to the bad is officiating. Eric Lewis stepped down. He was a longtime official. He had a big online social media scandal, and they wound up bringing in Tae Wong and Sheree Mitchell from the G League. With this addition, it came a lot more to be officiator based. These 2 came in and they kind of started setting like the example that they're not messed with. They're not some G League refs who are just going to come in and be pushovers. And I think it's kind of put the games all over the place. I find that there's little consistency. When I'm watching a game, it seems like there's too many stoppages, too many fouls. Obviously with the way physicality is, it's hard to manage these things. And I think refs are at an all-time high when it comes to calling fouls. And whether that be normal fouls, whether it be technical fouls, I think it's just a big detriment to the game in terms of game flow. Being able to entertain yourself for however long you might want to watch the game. I think in general, when you're gonna, like, it's almost like the NFL in terms of like celebration. When you're gonna let like players be players, you gotta draw a line somewhere. Like, you shouldn't be able to hand a penalty, like a technical foul out for staring a player down after a big play, waving a hand or an arm at a ref, like showing emotion, being able to like, talk to the crowd, flex on the crowd, questioning a pivotal call during the game. I just think these are little things that happen, and it's whether or not you believe that they're technical fouls or not. I feel like it's one of those things where if you're going to continue to do it, it'll just continue to get worse. Obviously, all those offenses that I just mentioned, I feel like multiple times or more often than not, I'm seeing those called throughout the season. With that being said, I'm not saying that technical fouls shouldn't be called at all. I'm just saying that punitive measures for expressing emotion, in my eyes, need to be dumbed down. I feel like the league is so concerned with marketability or social media or the young audiences, whether or not that be what they want to show role modeling for, or just making sure that they continue to keep this good image of themselves. It kind of gets lost when you want to watch it for entertainment. Obviously, I think the best thing to do in terms of this is just maybe have like new rules. I mean, I don't know, like there's not a really good way to put it. Like, I think conflict and emotion and game flow when it comes down to this stuff is good for the league. I think it's good for players to regularly go at each other and have this, trash talk and have this type of energy on the court. I want to see more of it. And it's like what makes the game fun when you get to watch these players go head to head and like, talk and just like trash talk each other and be entertainers, like be the best version of themselves on the court without worrying about refs. And I think it's gotten to a point where even with like, when it comes down to all that stuff aside, technical fouls, like when it comes down to watching a Joel Embiid game, it's like, I don't want to watch it anymore. You just see Joel Embiid shoot 20 free throws. I mean, the other night, Giannis had, 68 points, 64 points? He shot 32 free throws. Like, who wants to watch that game? Like, regardless of breaking history or not, no one wants to watch Giannis get to the free throw line 16 times. And that's just Giannis. There's probably, at least 70 free throws shot in that game. I mean, 60 free throws shot in that game. If he was shooting 32, you got to imagine there was at least 50. So I know I just went 70, 60, 50, but you got to imagine there's multiple trips to the line if he was getting 32 free throws. So it's just one of those things where I feel like that, if anything, is probably the biggest negative in terms of basketball, regardless of all the visuals in terms of jersey and courts. And then to finish off with the ugly, obviously we have Josh Giddey. I'm not going to get too much into that. I just thought it was something to mention. Obviously, if you've been following basketball and you've been following outside basketball, you've heard Josh Giddey got a little off-court trouble with a younger girl. And I think the biggest thing to say is this hasn't happened in a while since Karl Malone. I guess you could argue when it comes to age, it's probably been Karl Malone. Nothing else has really been mentioned other than Wander Franco in baseball. It's one of those situations where Josh Giddey continues to play worse. So it's a questionable scenario. Is getting to him and stuff, I guess is the biggest question. But for now, not having enough information and the fact that it hasn't been closed or the fact that there hasn't been much follow-up on it is really entertaining for me. I wouldn't say this is an entertaining situation, but I think it's just entertaining in the fact that it's something that became so big so quickly and kind of is dissolved rather fast. Obviously, PR is good at doing that, but it's funny to me that something like this can kind of be swept under the rug when it's way more of a problem than what Draymond is doing. And what Draymond's doing is bad, but I feel like Josh Giddey's off the court problem is way bigger than Draymond being a erratic player on the court. I think he was suspended indefinitely for the season. I'll focus more on Draymond now. He punched Jusuf Nurkic in the face the other night, and what seemed to be he was getting grabbed, and then he turned around and punched him, and he didn't knock him out, but he hit him on the floor for a couple minutes. And obviously he had the earlier season thing with Karl Anthony Towns got suspended for 3 games when he put him in a chokehold for almost 30 seconds. I feel like this is one of those things where obviously, like I said, I support players being players and enjoying themselves and being competitive on the court. But when it comes down to Draymond, it's a whole different level of just insanity. Like Pat Beverly loves talking, and I hate Pat Beverly, but it's enjoyable to see him talk to these people and be annoying. It's funny. Like obviously he pisses them off. But for Draymond, it's like literally just abusing players on the court, like just being a physically negative person in terms of what he does to other people. So I don't want that, but I think it's something that it's good that they're making a point of it. I think suspending him indefinitely is a lot. But I forget who made the point. I think it was Kendrick Perkins, and usually he's pretty stupid when it comes to what he says. But he made a good point. He's like, if John Morant got suspended for having a gun for 25 games, he just had a gun and he was waving it. And I get it. That's a very big negative. It's a brand thing. It's an image thing. We don't want to promote this type of stuff. I think at the same time, Draymond, maybe not indefinitely, but he should be at least getting the same suspension. He choked a dude out and punched a dude on the court. And you could argue that's worse than what, Ja didn't necessarily do anything other than, brandish a weapon, which in terms is bad. But it's not abusive. It's not like he was breaking the law per se. So, Draymond doing it is a whole different story. I wouldn't say he wasn't breaking the law. I'm just saying, in terms of what Draymond doing when it's putting your hands on a player multiple times, 2 times throughout the season, and it's very violent, I think it's way worse. And I think it's at the same measure of what John Morant did earlier, or what, obviously not the same type of thing, but same punishment should be handed out. But you guys gotta let me know what you think. I would love to hear your takes on the situation, whether it be Draymond or Josh Giddey, what I had to say about the jerseys, what I had to say about the courts, Josh Giddey. I want to hear all you guys have to say, so just let me know. I appreciate you guys watching as always, and tune in next Wednesday when I discuss playoffs and the future of the NFL. Thank you.